Forgiveness Unleashed. A Guide to Ultimate Freedom Part 1. Understanding Forgiveness. Forgiveness Unleashed. A Guide to Ultimate Freedom Chapter 1. Introduction to Forgiveness. The soft morning sunlight paints the old oak tree outside my window in strokes of gold. Its leaves, heavy with last night's rain, quiver with the touch of a gentle breeze. I watch, transfixed by the play of light and shadow, and somewhere deep within, a familiar, gnarled knot of pain begins to loosen. Perhaps it's the forgiving rhythm of nature, or maybe it's just the start of a new day, ripe with possibility. For a long time, the simple beauty of an ordinary sunrise was not enough to ease the burden of the past. The word, forgiveness, was just that, a word. It held no real meaning, no pathway to the peace I yearned for. What is forgiveness? The term is thrown around casually. Forgive and forget, they say. But if forgetting were so simple a task, why'd I still carry these wounds? If a flip of the switch could erase the memories that twist my stomach and haunt my dreams, I would gladly do so. True forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about making an intentional choice. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a decision to release ourselves from the prison of resentment. It's the understanding that the person who wronged us does not hold our future hostage. It does not condone their actions, and it certainly doesn't mean reconciliation. True forgiveness recognizes the pain inflicted but chooses not to dwell within it any longer. Let me tell you about Sarah. When we were in high school, she spread a vicious rumor that nearly drove me to despair. For years, I carried the weight of that betrayal, replaying her actions with fiery indignation. Sarah probably didn't remember what she'd done, but I carried that moment with me everywhere I went. I let it seep into my relationships, turning me wary and suspicious. The day I realized I was the jailer of my own misery was the day my journey toward forgiveness began. It was the day I decided to break free. Why is forgiveness important for personal growth? Holding onto a grudge is like clutching a burning ember. Yes, it hurts the person who ignited the flame, but the greatest destruction is reserved for ourselves. Unforgiveness has immense power. It warps our perceptions, coloring the world in shades of pessimism. We become hyper-vigilant, suspicious of everyone around us, expecting another blow. This constant state of alert puts immense stress on our bodies and minds. Resentment acts like poison, seeping into our lives with corrosive power. The act of forgiveness doesn't just liberate us from the past, it opens doors to a better future. When we forgive, we reclaim our power. We move from the role of victim to victor. We reclaim our sense of control, recognizing that our joy is not tethered to the actions of others. We heal emotionally. Studies have shown that forgiveness can reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. The act of letting go can have profound positive impacts on our mental health. We improve our physical health. Chronic anger and resentment trigger our stress response, causing the release of harmful chemicals that can affect our cardiovascular health, among other things. Forgiveness acts as an antidote, allowing our bodies to relax and heal. We strengthen relationships. Bitterness and hostility fester in connection. When we practice forgiveness, we create space for healthier, more genuine relationships based on love and trust. Imagine the weight lifted from your shoulders when you finally unclench your fists and loosen your grip on past hurts. That is the power of forgiveness. It's a pathway to freedom, not just from the person who hurt you, but from the pain they've inflicted. If there's a lock keeping you chained to the past, consider forgiveness the key. The journey towards forgiveness isn't always a straight, easy path, but I believe with every fiber of my being that it's one of the most transformative things you can undertake. In the coming chapters, we'll delve deeper into the process of forgiveness, the challenges, the rewards, and the way it can radically change your life. Hold on tight because you're about to become unchained. Forgiveness Unleashed. A Guide to Ultimate Freedom Chapter 2. The Power of Forgiveness. I once heard someone describe resentment as drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The haunting truth of this analogy stuck with me. Forgiveness is the antidote, the key to saving ourselves. Let's dive deeper into why the act of forgiveness holds such immense power, particularly for the person doing the forgiving. How does forgiveness benefit the forgiver? 1. Emotional freedom. The weight of anger and resentment can feel crushing. It gnaws away at our inner peace, creating a constant state of tension. Picture yourself carrying a heavy sack of rocks on your back. Each rock represents a hurt you harbor. When we forgive, we begin to lay those rocks down. Our shoulders lighten, our breathing eases, and a genuine sense of calm can finally find us. 2. Improved mental health. Research consistently links forgiveness to decreased symptoms of depression and anxiety. This isn't about magically erasing the pain, but it's about preventing that pain from consuming us entirely. Unforgiveness acts like an invasive mental weed, sending thorny tendrils into every corner of our minds. Forgiveness begins the process of clearing out that toxic growth, allowing healthy emotions to flourish. 3. Stronger relationships. When we simmer in our resentments, it's inevitable that bitterness will spill outward, souring our interactions with others. This can make building healthy, trusting relationships challenging. Forgiveness allows us to approach others with an open heart, fostering stronger bonds free from suspicion and the constant expectation of being hurt again. 4. Enhanced physical well-being. Unresolved anger acts as a trigger for our fight or flight stress response. This results in increased heart rate, elevated blood pressure, and the release of harmful stress hormones. Chronic stress weakens our immune system and makes us more susceptible to a wide range of illnesses. Forgiveness acts as a balm, creating a sense of calm and allowing our bodies the space to heal. 5. Spiritual growth. Many spiritual traditions teach the importance of forgiveness, not just for the offender, but as an act of self-love and connection to a higher purpose. Forgiveness is a way of aligning ourselves with values like compassion, mercy, and understanding. Embracing these principles can open the door to a deeper sense of meaning and peace. Examples of forgiveness in history and literature. The transformative power of forgiveness is immortalized in both history and fiction. These stories remind us that even in the face of immense pain, incredible acts of forgiveness are possible. Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years during South Africa's apartheid, Nelson Mandela emerged not as a man shattered by bitterness, but as an inspirational figure promoting reconciliation. His choice to forgive his oppressors became a beacon of hope, demonstrating how forgiveness fosters lasting change far beyond personal hurt. Corrie ten Boom. A survivor of the Nazi concentration camps, Corrie ten Boom endured unimaginable horrors. Yet, her book, The Hiding Place, details her extraordinary decision to forgive her tormentors. She understood that her own healing depended on releasing them from the prison of hate she could have harbored. Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. The tale of Jean Valjean, relentlessly pursued by the unforgiving Inspector Javert, paints a vivid picture of how one act of mercy can ripple outward. After the bishop shows Valjean compassion, the hardened ex-convict's life is forever changed, setting him on the path of redemption and ultimate forgiveness. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Amidst the story's potent themes of racism, the shy and reclusive Boo Radley surprises everyone with an act of selfless kindness. Scout Finch, the narrator, comes to recognize Boo's humanity, overcoming an initial fear of him. Her forgiveness of his differences is simple yet poignant. These stories aren't about excusing terrible behavior. They teach us that forgiveness does not erase the past, but it does pave a path forward. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves first. In the next chapter, we'll confront the common misconceptions that surround the concept of forgiving, and tackle some thorny questions of how and why to forgive even the deepest offenses. Chapter 3. Myths and misconceptions about forgiveness. A heavy padlock hangs from a rusted chain. Even though the key is within reach, something prevents us from taking it. Misconceptions about forgiveness act like that padlock, keeping us securely fastened to our pain. It's time to examine these myths and set ourselves free. Myth 1. Forgiveness means condoning the offense. Sometimes, I hear things like, "How can you possibly forgive him after what he did? His actions were horrible." I understand this sentiment. It seems counterintuitive that forgiveness doesn't equal erasing accountability. However, the two are distinct. Forgiving someone acknowledges the hurt they caused, but it releases your grip on the desire to see them suffer. Forgiveness offers them no free pass. They may still face consequences for their behavior, whether it's a damaged relationship or legal ramifications. Myth 2. Forgiveness is synonymous with reconciliation. The idea that forgiveness demands rebuilding the relationship is false. Reconciliation, if possible, can be a powerful element of healing for both parties, but it's not always feasible or advisable. Remember Sarah from my earlier story? Even though I forgave her for those hurtful lies in high school, we never became friends. Sometimes, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself with no intention of wrapping it for someone else. Myth 3. Forgiveness means you're weak. There's this notion that if you forgive, you're a doormat people can walk all over. In reality, forgiveness is one of the bravest, most empowered things you can do. It takes an enormous amount of courage to confront your pain head on and decide to break the cycle of negativity. There's nothing weak about refusing to let another person control your happiness. Myth 4. Forgiveness means forgetting what happened. Our memory isn't a book with pages we can rip out. Forgetting, especially with significant hurts, is unrealistic. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it changes how you see it. Instead of the wound remaining a gaping, raw source of pain, it can become a scar, a reminder of what you endured, but also of the strength you discovered in the healing process. Myth 5. You can't forgive someone unless they apologize. Waiting around for the apology that may never come keeps you trapped. Certainly, a sincere apology can facilitate the forgiveness process, but it's not a prerequisite. If the other person is unwilling or unable to acknowledge their wrongdoing, the choice to forgive remains yours to make. Remember, it's ultimately for your own benefit. Let me tell you about Michael, a man burdened with childhood trauma. His father abandoned him at a young age, leaving him with a deep wound of unworthiness and mistrust. For years, Michael clung to the hope that one day his father would reappear, apologize, and magically mend all that was broken. The lack of an apology became a barrier to his healing, allowing his father to maintain control over his happiness even in his absence. When Michael realized that forgiveness was a gift for himself, a decision he could make independently, the chains began to loosen. Myth 6. If you don't forgive, you can achieve justice. Anger is often fueled by the need to see the other person suffer, believing retribution will somehow balance the scales. However, holding on to resentment rarely delivers the satisfaction we crave. It might bring a fleeting sense of power, but in the long run, it leaves us emotionally depleted and just as hurt, if not more so. True justice may only be possible through legal or societal means, and forgiveness doesn't interfere with the pursuit of such justice. Debunking these myths is essential. Misconceptions warp our understanding of forgiveness, making it seem unachievable and undesirable. By recognizing them for the falsehoods they are, we gain more clarity about what true forgiveness means. It's a decision you make, not a feeling you're beholden to. It's a powerful tool for personal healing, regardless of whether the other person apologizes or faces any sort of consequences. In the next chapter, we will take a step beyond the theoretical and begin charting our individual paths toward forgiveness. Chapter 4. The psychological impact of unforgiveness. Imagine stepping into an old, dusty house. Spider webs cling to the corners. Sunlight barely penetrates the grime-streaked windows, and the air inside is stale and stagnant. Unforgiveness, much like this neglected house, creates a toxic environment within the self. In this chapter, we'll examine the far-reaching effects of holding onto grudges and explore ways to identify the signs of unforgiveness within ourselves. How holding onto grudges affects mental health. Unresolved anger and bitterness seep into every corner of our inner lives like a slow, corrosive poison. The psychological impact of unforgiveness can be extensive and deeply damaging. Depression. Unforgiveness fosters a negative mindset, turning our focus inward on pain and replaying hurtful scenarios. This cycle of rumination can escalate into depression, characterized by a loss of interest in life, hopelessness, and difficulty experiencing joy. Anxiety. Anger triggers the body's stress response, keeping us constantly on edge. This state of hypervigilance, where we're always bracing for the next hurt, puts a tremendous strain on our system, contributing to anxiety disorders. The future can feel unsafe, and building trusting relationships becomes difficult. PTSD. Unresolved trauma from major betrayals or abuse can lead to the development of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This is characterized by flashbacks, nightmares, and severe emotional distress. Forgiveness doesn't negate the need for professional help in these cases, but it can be a crucial component of the healing journey. Damaged self-esteem. Unforgiveness breeds self-doubt and perpetuates the idea that we deserve to be hurt. Every time we revisit the old wound, it reinforces a victim mentality, chipping away at our sense of worth. Diminished empathy. When steeped in our grievances, we become less able to extend empathy towards others. Bitterness can build walls, making it difficult to connect with people on a meaningful level and fostering a sense of isolation. Consider a woman named Amelia, who became consumed with rage after finding out her husband had an affair. The betrayal shattered her sense of trust. Amelia couldn't look at her husband without seeing pain and deception reflected back at her. Her previously optimistic nature soured. She became easily irritable, slept poorly, and withdrew from her friends and hobbies. The burden of her unforgiveness was dimming her light. Identifying the signs of unforgiveness in oneself. Sometimes, the signs are blindingly obvious: the white-hot anger that simmers just beneath the surface, or the constant need to vent about the person who hurt you. But those are the more overt manifestations. Unforgiveness can also be subtle and insidious. Here are a few signs to look out for. Rumination. Do you find yourself endlessly replaying past hurts in your mind? It's like watching a movie stuck on the most painful scene. The more you obsess, the deeper the wound becomes. Difficulty letting go. Even seemingly minor offenses from the past can linger, popping up at unexpected moments and spoiling your mood. You might hold grudges well past their expiration date, harboring bitterness about things others have long forgotten. Feeling triggered. Do you have an intense emotional reaction when reminded of the person who wronged you or the situation? This heightened response suggests there's still a lot of raw, unprocessed pain within. Loss of joy. Unforgiveness acts like a heavy blanket, smothering enthusiasm. You might find it difficult to experience the simple pleasures of life without a shadow of resentment coloring your outlook. Seeing the world through a cynical lens. When hurt is unhealed, distrust grows. There can be a tendency to assume negative intentions in others, a constant bracing for betrayal. It's important to be honest with yourself. Acknowledging the signs of unforgiveness is the first step toward changing the internal landscape. Remember, these are not signs of weakness, but rather indicators of a normal human response to pain. The point isn't to judge yourself for feeling this way, but to recognize the damage being done and decide to take steps forward rather than remain trapped in the past. In the next chapter, we'll discuss the important distinction between forgiveness and self-forgiveness, a sometimes overlooked but vital aspect of personal healing.